we a very good afternoon to everyone. I think we have most of the invitees already here. We will start the event now. Yeah. So before we begin, allow me to brief you on some ground rules during this event. First of all, please mute your microphone throughout the session. Second, please be informed that there will be no Q&A session during the presentation. So if you have any questions or feedback, you may post your question in the chat box during the presentation. The questions posted will be discussed in the moderated Q&A session later. And you may take your own break when necessary. And for your information, this whole session will be recorded. Yeah. So good afternoon and welcome to all participants. Welcome to the webinar series with the theme Demystifying BIM and AWP. This webinar is brought to you by Moxie, Petronas, JIC in cooperation with solution provider Autodesk and iConstruct. Yeah. So my name is Wei Chong, JIC Task Force member from Petronas, and I will be the MC for today's event. First and foremost, on behalf of the organizing committee, we would like to extend our sincere appreciation to all of you for making time to join us today. Again, thank you so much for your participation. We are honored to have more than 50 participants from various backgrounds with us today. Yeah. So before we proceed further, let us begin with the recitation of prayer that will be led by Mr. Muhammad Hakim from Petronas. For our non-Muslim participants, please observe the prayers in your respective faiths. So over to you, Mr. Hakim.
Thank you, Chong. Al-Fatiha. Yeah, correct. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين اللهم إنك خلق العظيم إنك سميع عليم إنك غفور رحيم إنك رب العرش العظيم إنك بذو الجواد الكريم. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, most merciful, all praise is due to the Almighty Allah, the cherisher and sustainer of the world. May the peace and mercy of Allah upon His Prophet Muhammad, his family, companions and followers. Allah Ya Kareem Ya Rahim. Ya Allah, bless your mercy and protection upon our demystifying building information modeling BIM advanced work packaging AWP event, jointly organized by Moxie and JIC Task Force and in collaboration with Autodesk and iConstruct. Give us your blessings for our event today from the start till the end. We seek your guidance to steer clear of anything that would be detrimental to the progress of our event. Ya Allah, show us guidance and adjust our paths and ways to bring success and glory for the industry. Bless us in this meeting and gathering and prevent us from harm and unfortunate event. Ya fa'alu lima yurid. Allahumma ja'al jam'ana hazal jam'al marhuma wa tafarruqana min ba'dihi tafarruqal ma'suma wa la taj'al fina wa la minna shaqiya wa la marhuma. Ya Allah, make our gathering here a blessed one and our dispersion thereafter a guided and protected one, and make not any among us a wretched or depraved one. Ya Allah, make easy for us every difficult thing with your special favor and kindness, for it is easy for you to make every difficult thing easy. Rabbana alayka tawakkalna wa ilayka adabna wa ilaykal masir. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina azabannar. Wassallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Thank you. Back to you, Chong.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hakim. So ladies and gentlemen, the objective of today's event is to cover the fundamentals of BIM and its place in the oil and gas industry. Our speakers will further discuss the standard practices in implementing BIM in projects and how it can lead to a more efficient implementation of the advanced work packaging methodology. Please find the agenda shown on the screen, which will be covered by our guest speakers shortly. We will start the sharing session by Autodesk on what is BIM and how BIM connected with oil and gas industry. Then we have speakers from iConstruct to present the AWP solution using their tools. Without further ado, I will pass the floor to our moderator, Mr. Syed Abdul Razak. Mr. Syed is our principal from Petronas Construction Department. He has over 29 years experience in construction management in various sectors, including oil and gas, refinery, petrochemical, and power plants. So let us welcome Mr. Syed, and over to you now, Mr. Syed.
Thank you, Chong. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalam ala sayyidil mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Salam Ramadan and very good afternoon to all, and welcome to joint industry collaboration between Moxie and Petronas. My name is Syed Abdul Razak, and I am a consultant technical specialist from GPD Petronas, and I'll be a session moderator. Today, this afternoon, we're going to demystifying BIM and AWP. So, we have an opportunity to listen a guest speaker, first from Autodesk, and second with the iConstruct. And we'll hear the opportunity to hear what the view on the matters. During the presentation, audience or participant may register a question in the chat room. So we will have somebody to collect the question which will be discussed at the end of the session. So today, the objective for the session, firstly, we want to understand the fundamental of the BIM. We want to identify the connection, the similarity, or the differences between BIM and AWP. And as well, we want to discover the scalable of AWP solution. Which AWP is free to all scale of the project, or just only limited to some size of the project. Okay. Today with me, it's great to have on board today together with us, Bob Muslia. Please welcome Mr. Stephen Gambert. He is Technical Manager with Autodesk and be working with Autodesk since November 2014. Okay, Mr. Gambert, having worked in the engineering industry for 20 years, passion today is to help others become more team-centric by working collaboratively, working together. Through the use of BIM process and Autodesk cloud products, we try to help businesses see the power that they can harness for their own. Welcome, Stephen. The stage is yours.
Okay, let me just share my screen. I'm guessing you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
There we go.
Really.
Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Stefan Gumpert. I am a technical specialist at Autodesk, and today I'm going to look at trying to demystify BIM and AWP, or Advanced Work Packaging. Together we're presenting this process together with iConstruct, and myself will just give you a brief introduction of where BIM sits and where that process lives, I guess, in everything that we do. So here's a basic agenda of what I'm going to cover. I won't take too long to look over this, and we'll just basically jump straight into the fundamentals of BIM, or what is BIM. And the biggest, most important thing to understand is BIM itself is a process. So the term BIM, for those of you who are not aware, refers to building information modeling. However, it is not just referring to buildings. It is referring to roads, highways, bridges, buildings, process plants, mining structures, anything. The process of using BIM is the ability to model components with information attached to it. information that is usable to make good design decisions and construction decisions in the overall process of bringing the concept of an asset to real life and in its operation mode. So the key takeaway here is BIM is a process. It's not a thing. It's not something that we buy or acquire. It is a process that we implement, making sure that when we are modeling in 3D, we're not modeling dumb 3D solids. We're modeling things that have real world information attached to them, i.e. a valve, what type of valve it is, what is the valve tag, what is the insulation on the valve, who's the manufacturer, what's the specification, what's the pressure rating. All that information attached to the item is part of BIM as an overall. So if we look at an overview and what BIM actually provides, and the key thing that BIM gives you the ability to provide is resilience. Accelerate that process from a 2D process to a digitized process, being able to use that information for those digital processes and even harnessing some of that information to make good decisions around sustainability, whether we're using too much of a particular type of material, for example, which makes the plant no longer sustainable. All these are things that we can get out of our BIM model. Ultimately, that data that sits inside of our BIM model gives us that ability to accelerate that digitization of that process, whether it's remote working, whether it's making decisions around the design process or making decisions around how certain construction processes should be done, or even that data flow on to the asset or the life cycle of that asset for the managing that component in that downstream process. Now, the digital transformation process, as you see here, has been around for many years. And I can recall, moving from 2D to CAD, CAD to BIM, BIM to the cloud. And of course, the digital twin is a hot topic of the moment as well. So making sure that information that you are creating in that BIM process is reused, not wasted. And so many people today produce great models with so much information, and as soon as the construction phase is finished, that's it. It's finished. It's kept. It's never used again, and that's the part that's missing here. Having that information, as I said, makes the ability to make better decisions around construction and design. So, for example, if you wanted to lower the embodied carbon emissions component of your design, being able to know what actually sits inside that model. If that information is accessible, you can make the decision and reduce those emissions. If we look at the change management side of things, or the change in the process, right? Most people only ever see the outcome of the end result. Or if you compare this to what's referred to as the BIM iceberg, it's the piece at the top that everyone sees. But it's all the bits down the bottom of this iceberg that actually make up the outcome at the top. What are the procedures, the policies, what's the norms, what else goes into making that final result that you see. And it's that I component that we're going to talk about today. If we look at a traditional cost model, which is the black line, the design starts, eventually it ramps up, and as the design comes to completion, the cost of that project also goes up in a traditional design sense because construction completes. Getting the design process to implement a BIM-based process earlier on means that your reduction in cost can be vastly reduced and accelerate that design in a more efficient manner. And this is important to understand. Now, as an industry, the industry has come together and formed a standard called ISO 19650. And this standard is the standard that gives us the ability to organize and catalog this information from a design and construction process. And there's quite a bit to this information, to this standard. I mention it because it actually is one of the hot topics of the moment, because ISO 19650 is becoming more and more important during that execution phase, or that planning phase at the beginning of what do we need to have in that model, so that at the end of the project, that BIM execution plan, so that at the end of the project, we've got the right information for operations, handing that information over to the asset so that you can reuse that information and not build that information again from scratch. So if we look at BIM in the oil and gas space, it exists in the planning phase, in the validation phase, obviously the design and documentation phase, coordination, and even the manage phase once the asset has been built and constructed itself. So planning, what could that mean? Well, it could mean taking hundreds of photographs from a drone in an aerial space, taking those photographs, uploading them to our recap software, being able to stitch those images together, create a terrain model with all those photographs, and then be able to use that terrain model as an export, either as a contour model or even a point cloud model, to be able to reuse that information at the next phase. So after the capturing of that information, how do we use it in the planning phase? So for example, taking that terrain model into recap, doing potential flood analysis, maybe some preliminary layouts of where you might want to put some roads for that new facility that you may be planning to build. What's the potential cut and fill in that area? And again, this is all information that we've already built and reused at that next phase. Now, it doesn't matter whether it's roads, highways, vertical construction, or or a refinery or a facility of some sort. So you can see all these components that you're modeling: sewage plants, chemical treatment plants. There's lots of assets that need to be modeled and all have information attached to these projects. And again, our sites could be made up of a series of tanks, pipes, but there's obviously also administration buildings which comes into play, and road design that surround these facilities as well. And BIM plays a massive part in all these applications that we see here. It's important that once we've planned the concept of a design, we need to obviously validate, well, is that actually what we want to do? If we think about the old days, we would build a model out of cardboard, but maybe we want to visualize that in a virtual reality type environment, being able to do that HAZOP study or that analysis of, is there enough head clearance room? Can I even get access to that valve? What does it look like when I look up, like in this case, for example? Again, the visualization component is super important. What does that asset actually look like out in its installed location? What's the sequence of those things that they're being installed? This visual validation gives those stakeholders in the organization that need to understand what it is that we're constructing is actually a function of what they want in the original design. Obviously, the biggest part of this is the design documentation piece. And from this perspective, it's the design documentation, which we're all used to in those traditional 2D outputs, but it's generating those 2D outputs from that intelligent 3D software. Now, whether that's an intelligent P&ID that allows us to export and import valve tags, manufacturer details, and update drawings en masse, or whether it's producing piping ISOs from Plant 3D or steel fabrication drawings from Advanced Steel, modeling that next generation of equipment in Inventor, or producing potential concrete models in Revit. Navisworks is that key of bringing all those assets together in one location. And I talk a lot about Navisworks because the presentation that Ronnie is going to talk about is going to use Navisworks as a base for that discussion that she's going to do. But if you think about projects, they need coordination. And what does coordination normally exist? Not all projects are greenfield sites. So we need to bring in those point clouds. Now, whether you bring those point clouds into the design application or whether you bring them into Navisworks, that information of being able to understand where that existing asset is so we can place the new asset is part of that coordination process. But it might be doing clash detection or timelining the sequence of the construction, or even doing a reality capture output as part of that process. You can see as you bring in all those different models, you get to visualize those components, and all that information that's attached to all those components, the I in BIM, is all accessible inside of this Navisworks environment. Walking around, flying around, being able to do that HAZOP study in a virtual environment. And then, of course, again, taking those final models, exporting them out, and doing a rendered visualization of that final plant. Again, being able to validate exactly what it is that we are building. Now, at Autodesk, we also believe that the cloud is super important in this discussion because the I in BIM needs to be able to be shareable with other parties. Now, each time we export data and hand it over to the next party, there's data loss, and data loss equals lost revenue or lost money. It's lost time, it's wasteful. So being able to share this information in a unified data environment or a central location means that all parties that are accessing this information as part of the design and construction phase and even the operations phase from a long-term perspective means one location, one source, giving us access to everything. And at Autodesk, this is called the Autodesk Construction Cloud. It gives the ability for parties to collaborate, coordinate their designs, potentially do also some quantification in this space. And then, of course, there's a whole construction and asset installation process that Autodesk Build tends to offer. All this data is stored seamlessly on the Autodesk Docs base. And this is the data repository of that construction cloud system. Ultimately, it gives everyone access when they need the information. And this is the important part. Rather than having it stored behind a firewall, having to then release documents through uncontrolled mechanisms like emails, or even worse, people taking things to site on paper, having a unified environment gives you access to that information. So as I said, whether that's document control, whether we are referring to document approvals, or just pure collaboration on documents, being able to do markups on 2D plans, PDFs, whatever that may be, or even better, the biggest one that I wish I had when I was back in industry, being able to do a design review in a mechanism that allows everyone to access the information in one single location, and then also record the requirements from that design review. I mentioned 19650 in the very beginning. The naming conventions that sit inside the ISO 19650 standard can be implemented inside of the construction cloud as well. And of course, being able to view the files and the data attached to all those objects is so important because it's that information that we talked about that needs to be accessible. You can see in this particular case, comparing old versions of a file to new versions of a file, trying to understand what's been added, removed, and modified. Again, is super important as part of that workflow. Transmittals, being able to share documentation, both 2D and 3D viewing capability. I think we're up to 50 or 60 different file formats that we can view inside the construction cloud with its intended data. And of course, the integration between our design tools like Plant 3D, Revit, being able to store those files directly in the cloud so that we can collaboratively work. Obviously, everyone wants to be able to connect to their data through traditional means like Windows Explorer, and with the desktop connector, you will see a virtual drive to your construction hub as well. Design collaboration, I'm not going to talk too much about this, but being able to, with different departments that exist in a design project, whether it's structural, mechanical, piping, electrical, all these assets need to share and consume information. And from a timeline perspective, we need to be able to record who sent information and when. So from a history perspective, we can actually see what it is that's happened during the life cycle of our project. And that's what you can see here when we click on the different assets that were shared during the design process. We can see what that current package of information looked like. So having that one department share their design, the other department consume the shared design, and then utilize it as part of their process. And of course, then being able to share that information back again for potentially another department. And the cloud gives us the ability to be able to do that. Whereas inside a controlled firewall, it's only the people that sit inside that organization. So having access to third parties, contractors, to be able to share these packages of information seamlessly in one cloud environment is the key that we're trying to show. One source, one location. Obviously, coordination, being able to pick up clash detection in the cloud, create issues to manage those clashes, and of course, coordinate those models to be able to see multiple disciplines in single views. Again, this all can be done in the cloud too. So for those people who don't have access to those desktop applications, this is an environment that gives us the ability to be able to do that. And of course, all that information attached to those elements that we've modeled in our BIM-based application, it's all accessible to those people in this environment as well. And I keep talking about it, it's the eye that is super important here to be able to view. I'm not going to talk too much about the build component of our cloud, but understand there is lots of capability here to utilize that information, whether it's consuming 2D files, 3D models, whether it's managing the cost controls, maybe doing quality inspections or safety checklists, or even installation of those assets to be able to do when were things delivered, commissioned, which checklists were executed on the commissioning, what test results were stored against that asset, all in that cloud space. Ultimately giving our construction teams access to almost the same information that the design teams have in the office. So the design teams in the office always have access to the 3D model. A lot of times outside, the construction guys have to visualize everything from a 2D perspective. A picture tells 1,000 words. Giving someone that visual 3D representation means the execution of that project is much easier. Ultimately, this information wants to lead to asset management. Being able to take that pump, that valve, that spool of pipe and manage it from a category perspective or an asset perspective inside the cloud, being able to set the status of where that asset currently is it installed, delivered, has it already been gone, has it gone through its acceptance testing, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, being able to apply the checklists to all those and being able to record those checklists against the asset during the installation of those items. And of course, having it stored in one location. So in this case, pump 1001 has got all its issues, attachments, and checklists all categorized in one single location, which is super important when you want to access all that information. Centralized document is the second bit. Having all those documents in one central location, rather than having to say, hey, send me that spec, that manual, that item that gives me enough information to execute that with that item out on site. Again, there is many different components here that we can talk about because let's be realistic, Construction Cloud is massive and so is our design tools. But the takeaway here is that our design tools and the Construction Cloud work seamlessly together to take that BIM data or that I in BIM and share it from design through to construction and all the way to operations and handover. Again, it's the I in BIM that is important. The process of using BIM is about modeling intelligent items with data attached to them and sharing that data from one process to the next, to the next, to the next. And in this case, Navisworks for the advanced work packing is the key to that process. I want to leave you with one thought. How do we empower our designers, our construction teams to make better decisions using this data? Don't just give them a flat 2D drawing. Give them information to make better decisions and ultimately build a better asset. If you want to learn more about any of these components, because I did definitely rush through it, we have two great resources. Our local team, Po and Amy, exists in Malaysia, who you can reach out to, and I'll leave this on screen just for a second or two. And from that point, we're not going to do a Q&A, we're going to leave that to the end, but with that, I will stop sharing my screen and hand it back to the next presenter.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Stephen.
So is my sounds clear right now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Because there's some feedback mentioned that my voice not very clear today. But anyway, thanks for your presentation. So it's very, I would say, insightful. So at least it's for data management. I can see from the visualization, and then we have a cloud for the sharing. So it helps for the construction, for the execution, and as well we extended up to the asset life study for the operation and maintenance. So we have some question, but we keep it until end of the session. So hope you be patient, Stephen.
Thank you.
All right. So we move to the next presenter. Also from Australia, Please welcome Ronnie Gianzi. Glad to have you in the session. So Ronnie Gianzi worked as a business development manager at iConstruct, which is a business services company founded in 2006. She is a part of the business development team within the sales department. Ronnie graduated from CQ University in 2016 and is currently based in Perth, Australia. So Ronnie, having more than 15 years experience in business development and project coordination, Ronnie's current role as a business development manager in iConsult, working with clients, implement BIM practice in their project and supporting with AWP methodology to BIM implementation. So here we can see that the connection, the BIM and AWP. Please proceed, Ronnie. The stage is yours. Thanks.
Thank you, Sid. Thank you so much for having me. I'll just share my screen with everyone and share my presentation. So I am the Business Development Manager from iConstruct, and we have been working with Autodesk Navisworks since we were incepted back in 2006. We are a plugin solution to Navisworks, and because our solution is agile, we can work alongside any other solutions that you already have within your company. And we work across many different areas because we are so agile. So we can work with anyone in the AEC industry, to infrastructure, to industrial, energy and mining, and of course, oil and gas. Today, I'm going to be stepping through a demonstration on iConstruct Pro and Control Panel. I will be showing you the process of BIM, as what Stefan was talking about. But first, before I get into that, we want to talk about how we can really utilize BIM to help us be really successful when it comes to construction. And the way we do that is by using our 3D models and by integrating the data in those 3D models. So we want to take the engineering design information, construction information, and the asset management information and display that in a 3D model. From there, we have a connected experience for 3D, 4D, 5D, and more. From here, this is when we can really get some good information. We can get actionable insights. We can get insights on clash, on construction installation, and then also on asset analytics. But what is the number one thing to consider when you are wanting to create a digital thread to work with information in BIM? And the number one thing is having your asset ID or your asset tag. So it is that one information, that code that you're going to assign to every object within your 3D model. From there, it's really important that we have alignment across the project. So when we have defined our asset tag, we need to have it noted in our business critical documents. And when it's noted in those documents, we can then get alignment between all of our departments. So from project schedule to materials, from design and engineering, they can all have that one asset tag assigned to all of their nomenclature that they work with in their defined areas. And then we collate all that data into an SQL. So how do we then leverage this data across the asset, the life cycle, the lifespan? So we want to use the data all the way starting in design. We then want to use it in digital engineering because there is so much that we can get from it in digital engineering. Then this is what gives us the ability to use advanced work packaging when we get to construction. And then we can harness that information during the asset management. So whether the asset management runs for 50 years to 100 years, that is a really long time that they can really get use out of the 3D models. When we're looking at digital engineering, it is the project intelligence that we use in this phase. And it's really important for the asset tag because it enables us to have that traceability and connectability throughout the lifetime of the project down to the individual elements. When we move on to construction and we're looking at advanced work packaging, with this project intelligence, AWP practices can be utilized to prevent out of sequence construction. And this is when we can save 25% on installation. And this was a study done by the University of Austin, Texas. And so it's a 25% on cost overruns and 33% on scheduled overruns saving. And this is by having alignment across all the departments. I'm going to show you a case study from one of our clients. This is Connie from KBR, and let's see what she has to say using Autodesk Navisworks and iConstruct for AWP.
So to me, AWP is very important as a whole because it allows you to start with the end in mind. You define your construction execution plan, you break down the construction areas, and what's important is that engineering and procurement are working to those same priorities.
This client's very forward-thinking, and so when we presented them the Autodesk approach with using BIM 360 and our advanced workspace packaging that we always do on projects, it was really a win-win. And of course, we brought in iConstruct to provide color code status and visualization to the project as well.
Through Autodesk, the use of Navisworks kind of sets the playing field because it really doesn't matter what engineering tool was utilized for the model. If it's PDS or PDMS, you're still able to get a Navisworks model output.
Navisworks with iConstruct is so flexible that we can basically take an Excel spreadsheet and with a little bit of intelligence in the existing model, we can create attributes.
You can actually take a model that comes out of engineering and then grow on it, add more data to it to meet the project's needs.
And so Connie says that she thinks every project is going to want to work with this tool and need this tool.
So to me, AWP.
So next we have Aptum, and Aptum were building work packs at a rate of 135 in the first 3 weeks of their project. When they implemented iConstruct with Navisworks, that then increased to a rate of 500 work packs per week. This is 10 times faster. Let's hear from Aptum.
Aptum offers services including engineering and construction, particularly focused on capital services. And we also do program management, construction management. Our particular advanced work packaging initiative is tied mostly and primarily to our capital services offering as an EPC. At Aptum, we're challenged to think differently, and where we're mandated to work outside of the box and look for better ways to work. We selected iConstruct to help us with package planning because when we saw the demonstration, our focus here at Aptum is on the end user. It's on enabling the end user and that user interface. We know what they need to do, we know what the objectives are, we know what the requirements are, but we want to make it easy and straightforward for them to make that happen, and iConstruct was definitely the tool for that. Once we got licensing in place, it took us about 2 weeks to get fully up and going with iConstruct, and a big help behind that was that it integrated with some of the other tools like Navisworks that we already were using and already had them in place. What we knew that we needed to do to make it valuable to our customer is create a scalable implementation of advanced work packaging. So we're familiar with all the other companies that are much larger and owners that are much larger in scenarios where the perception is that it's easier to implement and more valuable from a return on investment perspective. But what we believe is that the fundamental building blocks and concepts of it apply on all levels and all size projects.
So that was a really great outcome that Aptum are getting with their AWP implementation. And then we go to asset management. So once construction is complete and with commissioning done, we can then hand over the models to the owner, and then they can utilize those models for asset health, operational insights, performance constraints, and more. And this is when they're really utilizing those models to create that digital twin of their asset. So today I'm going to step through 2 tools, and the first one being iConstruct Pro, and then the second one being our AWP solution called Control Panel. With iConstruct Pro, we can work on any model that you open in Navisworks. So whether that's a smart plant model, a Viva, IFC. What I'm going to step through today is a series of model conditioning processes. And this is dealing with the I in BIM. And what I'll step through is going to show you also an AWP process in our iConstruct Pro tool. Now, when it comes to model conditioning, or even when it comes to clash management, whatever workflow process that you devise, you can create an automation. So if there's a task that you need to run weekly, there's probably a better opportunity for you to save time by automating that process. And that's in our tool called BIMflow, which is part of iConstruct Pro. We can also open up documents that are in BIM 360 docs. So if you have the document number assigned to the object in the model, then we can open up that document on a browser in Navisworks. Then moving on to Control Panel. And what this enables us to do is to collate information from materials, engineering, project schedule, and progress measurement. And when we get alignment with all of those departments, we can actually then go ahead and create our work packs and our work pack reporting as well. So I'm going to stop the presentation, and then I'm going to move on to a demonstration. I'll just turn my camera off so I can actually see more of my screen. Okay. So this is a really large model. So the first thing that I'm going to show you is iConstruct Pro. This is iConstruct Pro. We just dock it on the side here. We've got tools under general configuration and tools under standard tools. As per the name, general configuration is where you get the freedom to create an outcome that you need for your model. So no matter what your models look like, you're going to be able to get the outcome that you need for having a concise selection tree and concise information on your property tabs. So with this model here, you can see that I've got many different file types. We've got NWDs, we've got RCS, DGN files, And it makes it really hard to find information, especially when we're going down the selection tree and we've got many groups before we get to the item level. So what we want to do is we want to apply a tool called Reconstruct. And what Reconstruct will allow us to do is to redesign this selection tree. So I'm not going to run the process on this model because it will just take a little bit too long, but let me show you a model that we have already run it on. So what we have done is we've just collated a small section of that previous model. And now if you have a look at the selection tree, we've got this layer which has the discipline. And then if we go down one more, we've got the group level, and then we have the item level. So we've got 3 or 4 levels there in our selection tree. And then we've got some information here already. But you can see just how much easier it is to look for the information that we want in the model. So the first thing that I'm going to do is use a tool called integrator. So if I just click on here and I'm working on the group level, you can see that I don't have many tabs here or much information, but I do have this name. So the first thing that we do when we work with a model is that we look to condition the model. And I'm going to use a tool called integrator first. And what integrator is going to allow me to do is to create a new group here. So you can see now I've got my iConstruct data tab and I've got this equipment number. What I did was I took this name and this value and I pushed it over to iConstruct data tab. And now that is the beginning of me creating a model with great data. Now that I know that that one tool works properly, I can apply it to all the other objects in my model. And so now when I click on all of those other objects, they're all going to have their own unique iConstruct data tab. So you can see that it's been applied to all of those groups. And I can click through and you can see the iConstruct data. This is a user-defined tab, which means I can push and pull data on this tab and edit it as I need. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to use a tool called Data Links. And what this is going to enable me to do is to consume data from an external database. So now when I press this, you can see now we've got all this other really good information on the tab of that object. Now I call the information in from an Excel database, but you can call information in from an SQL. You can also call information in from a CSV or from Microsoft Access. Again, I'm going to select all of those objects and I'm going to apply data links. So you can see here that I have my work pack number. I've got my equipment number, which is my unique identifier. And then I've got some other fields of information here. I've also got hours of work. I've got percentage complete. And I've got the discipline here. So this is going to allow me to create some other reports and use some other tools. So what I might use next is a tool called Color Code. And I'm going to use Color Code to show us the criticality of this plant. And I'm consuming data again from an Excel document. And you can see how we can apply a color override to this object. And then we have this table here, which is showing us that red is critical and the green is not so much critical at this point. What we can then do is we can then save that to a viewpoint. And then we can also push that to a report as well. So I would go to my standard tools. I would go to view report. I would select my template and then I would press run. And then, so this is a report that I have, which shows us the model, and then it shows us the elevation view as well. It's easy for us to reset the color we just select all of those objects, we right click, and then we go to reset appearance. What I want to do next is I want to create some search sets and some save viewpoints. And I'm going to do that with a tool called Audit. So I'll simply just apply this, and it's going to run through and create some work packs for me. And what it's doing is it's actually creating those work packs based on the number that I had assigned in the property. So this is how easy it is to create our work packs. From here, again, I'm going to go to my standard tools. I'll go to my view report. I'll select my work pack report this time. I'll select one of those, and then I will press run. And it's going to collate another report for me. So we are using a tool called Report Designer for this layout, and it is completely configurable because you can get any, you can design any layout that you like. You can see we've got a plan view of the model, and then we've got a snapshot of the objects for installation. We have all the work pack information here, and then we have the equipment, the percentage complete, we have the commercial allocation, and then we have the hours to go, and then the total hours as well. So through the construction process, you can continue to update the schedule of the construction on an Excel, and then you can consume that in the model, and then you can push that out to a report. Okay, so we've gone through a couple of tools here. I've shown you the reconstruct tool, which has allowed us to redesign that selection tree and ensure we've got this really concise selection tree so we can easily look for information. Then we had a look at a tool called integrator, and integrator allowed us to push information from one tab onto another tab to create our own unique user-defined tab. And one other thing that I will show you here as well is it is completely editable, so I can right click and I can edit the property value here. Then I showed you data links, where we were able to link further information onto the model from an external data source. Then looked at color code, where we can apply a color override on the model, and this can show us any status that we need. So based on the project, once we've updated all the data in an Excel spreadsheet, we can then consume that back into the model. Then I showed you audits, and audits allows us to create save viewpoints and selection sets, and then we can create our work packs from there and then push that out to a report. So that is some of the features on iConstruct Pro. What I'll do now is I'm going to move on to another tool, and I'm going to show you what our control panel looks like. So obviously it's another tool that we can dock on the window for Navisworks. So with this one here, I've got my model, but I don't have a project loaded. I'm going to show you what it looks like when you're creating a new project. So the first thing that I'm going to do is, let me just, okay, one moment. Just jump onto this one here. So this one here, I do have a project which is loaded, and we already have all the data in this template. So what I need to do is I need to click here, and this is going to open the database for me. So here is the name of the project. Then we have the expected start date and expected end date. We have the project type, so you can select whatever project that you're working in. And then you have the project stage as well that you can select. And then we have the work breakdown structure. So we can create as many work breakdown structures as required as per the disciplines within the project. And we can switch back and forth between the two because we can have multiple work-based planners creating work packs in the same model. Now I'm going to go into my data source because what we're doing with the tool here is we're consuming the data from the external data source, whether that is an Excel or whether that is an SQL. So this is our staging tables here. So we've got our main table and then we've got our staging table. So the staging table is where we create all of our statements, because what we've also done is we've consumed our drawing status, we've consumed our material status as well. Now, the reason why we do this is we are able to create a lot of rules, and the rules are created in the staging here. And it's really important that we have the rules because this is what brings us success when it comes to creating our work packs. So as you may have recalled, I was saying that the University of Austin, Texas found that there is 25% savings on installation because installation is, well, the work packs are created when there is feasibility, meaning that the materials are available, that the drawings are available. And so what we can do on the back end here is we can say we want our drawing status and our materials status to have a 70% completion on availability. So now you can see here on is feasible, feasibility must equal 70%. So when I have 70, then it's going to give me a tick, which is going to allow me to create a work pack. And this is how we get the success when it comes to advanced work packaging. We can even create rules in the back end where if we have a lot of structural components, do we need to book in a crane to install that? So that is another control that we can have in control panel as per the name. Then what we would do is we would then go to our current WBS, and then we select a couple of fields that we want to have in our work packs. And so here we've selected the area, the unit, the construction work area, and then the CWP as well. Okay, so that is what the back end looks like for control panel. I'm just going to OK out of this. And we'll just have to give that a moment to load. It's quite a big database. Now what I need to do is when I click on a pipe, right click on this, and then I'm going to set my WBS. But what you can see now is I've clicked on here and then this has highlighted. Now, the reason why we've got that is because if I go to my properties, and I'm just going to go down to my geometric level, I'm going to go to this tab here. Now you can see that this is a Genesis AWP tab, and I've got my primary key. So this is my unique identifier, my asset tag. And I've just used that from this tab here, and I used integrator to push it to my own user-defined tab. I've called it primary, and I've given my tab a specific name which matters to my project. And so this is a model that we have already conditioned using iConstruct Pro. So it's really important that we have the model conditioned, that we have all the data that is concise, so then we can seamlessly work with a model to create our work packages. So I'm going to right click and then I'm going to go to set WBS. And now we can see here that on our WBS, we've got the area, the unit, the CWA, and then the CWP. And this is what we use to build our work packs. I'm just going to select this button here, and then it's going to remove the objects that aren't in piping. So this is another control. This means it's only going to allow me to create work packs based on items that I want to specifically focus on, which is great because we don't want to create work packs and give them to the foreman when they don't have those objects available to install. Now, this is the is feasibility. You can see I have all these ticks here, and then you can see I have the material status and the drawing status. And this is at 70% each, which is great. If I come down here and I tick this button, you will see that it has some other objects that aren't available, which means this object here, these don't have ticks because they are only at 20% availability. So when it comes to sourcing materials, sourcing other items from procurement, and I guess document approval, that information is going to continually be updated in a database. And this is when you will need to refresh that information in Control Panel. And so once you have those processes streamlined, it can be automated. So it is just a matter of having those processes defined, knowing what all the information is, and then being able to refresh the processes as you go. And then when it's refreshed, you can then be able to continue to create work packs. So what I'll do now is I'll select a couple of objects. And what I might do first is I'll just go like this. Rather, I'll go here, and then I'm going to press this one here. This is giving us a section box. And so it's a really good feature. Now I might want to just select all those objects and press this button here. This is Add Selection to Work Pack. Now I've got my hours here. So it's saying that this is the amount of hours that it's going to take to install, and this is Work Pack 1. So I'm just going to press OK. Now that that's done, I'm just going to tick that again and untick that. So you can see that that section that I've created is no longer there because it's in a work pack. So I don't need to worry about that anymore. I'll just reset to my group level, and then I'll just select a couple more objects. Create another work pack. I have the ability to add it to my existing work pack if I want to, or I can continue to create a new work pack. And now that's done. Now I'll just create one more work pack. Again, click here. Wonderful. So I have 3 work packs that are created. Now, if I go to my work pack tab, you can see that they're all here, and I've got my work pack code, which comes from this number here. So you can see that that is how we are defining our work pack numbers is from the CWP that we've defined in the company, in your own company. So this is not something that iConstruct mandates. All the information is as your company defines it. So if you have a digital engineering standard, you might have these standards already set for the naming conventions. So now that I have my work packs created, what I can do is I can apply a color. So I'm just going to apply that now. So you can see I've got 3 different colors on the model and 3 different colors here. If I go to this little feature, I've selected my minimum and my maximum, and I base it off a column. So I've based it off the work pack code, but you can base the coloring off any measurement. So any data that you have within your tables, you can color code based on those values. So I can select this, and then that's going to hide the model, and then it's just going to show us those objects there that we've selected to create our work packs on. What we can also do is we can create our saved viewpoints And then we can also create our selection sets. So I'll go ahead and I'll create the save viewpoint. So it gives us an option to define a name for the work pack. We can replace existing viewpoints as we've created before, and we'll just go ahead and select that. And now we've got our viewpoint created here. So for each individual work pack that we have, we've got them identified here. And then it's just a matter of using the iConstruct Pro and going back to view reports and selecting to push that out to a report. So you can use both Control Panel and iConstruct Pro together. I'll select to override back to the normal color. And that is how we create our work packs. Now, when it comes to the information that we have as shown on here, we've actually had a template that we've configured previously, and I can import a template if I like. One, I've already imported that previously. If I've got different views, I can then go back to my different view. And this is what it would look like originally when you first set it up. Then you can drag and drop objects that you don't want, or you can right click and go to the column chooser. And then what I can also do here is I can drag and drop my work packs. So I can have my work packs defined by my area. And that is another really handy feature when we're looking to create work packs, because we want to ensure that perhaps we're working in a particular sequence for the safety of the foreman when they're on site. So you want to perhaps take into account the machinery that comes in, and the permits that are required for specific areas. So working in those working in areas would be very helpful when it comes to your site installation. And then I can simply just drag that one back in. Okay, so that was an overview of iConstruct Pro and Control Panel. So with iConstruct Pro, we stepped through today the model conditioning tools, and this is what we use for the I in BIM. So we are pushing and pulling and editing and manipulating the data in the model, and we're doing that with our tools called Reconstruct, Integrator, Data Links, Append Data. And then we moved over to our work packaging tool called Control Panel, and we showed you how we can consume data from many other departments to ensure that we're getting alignment. And we can get alignment by creating statements. We can create Boolean statements in the back end, which gives us the feasibility, which is our green light. It's our approval to go ahead to create work packages. And this is what is going to ensure that we are able to save 33% on schedule overruns and 25% on installation overruns, because we have alignment between all of our departments. That concludes my presentation. Thank you so much for having me at this workshop. I've enjoyed my time, and I'll hand back over to you.
Thank you, Ronnie. So it's a very good demonstration, I would say. So step by step, and we can see that the capability of the iConstruct on the on the iConstruct is more toward AWP instead of BIM, right? Can you give us some clarification between AWP and BIM here, Ronnie, if you don't mind?
Sorry, some clarification between AWP and...
Yeah, because I observe there's a similarity in AWP and BIM. It's both. It's about visualization, about cloud, right? And also they can extend up to the asset lifecycle management. So what the difference basically? Because now here in Malaysia we have to practice now. Some say they use BIM, some say they use AWP. We are confused now. So if you can clarify both of these, I think Stephen also may help to answer this because you are promoting more on BIM, and On the Ronnie, you are more on the AWP. So actually, what's the difference between these two?
If you like, I can jump in there. Look, see,
Thank you, Stefan.
the difference here that I would say between AWP and BIM is that with the advanced work packing, you're creating packages of work to be consumed out on the construction site, and the packages of visual information that you're creating to combine with other information, it's only possible because of that I component in BIM that you're executing during the design phase. So otherwise it becomes very difficult on classification and the organization of that model data to be able to consume it in those work packs.
Okay, so it's actually similar, but in the AWP they have more extended activity to the work packaging, right? So they have what they call construction work area. They have a part of construction, and then they translate into construction work packages, engineering work packages, test work packages. Is it right? Something like that. But
Yes.
BIM doesn't have this.
BIM complements this process in that everything you put into that original design model can be reused to help that process on the tail end of your design. And that is the important aspect here. That process that you implement in the beginning makes all that work on the tail end easier and more efficient, and hopefully will then end up in a better built asset.
Okay. So I think both have a capability, yeah. So let's go to the question in the chat room. Wei Chong, have you collect all the question, or we just go to the chat room here?
Yeah, I think we can go to the chat room. Maybe we can start from the first question from Mr. Ao.
Yes, there's one question from Mr. Al. A question for Stephen. ISO 19650. It is also applicable for oil and gas project, whether onshore or offshore.
Yes. So the ISO standard of 19650 is specific to the organization and categorization of information in specific, including your 3D models. And there's many aspects to ISO 19650 that has nothing to do with our models as well. But the standard itself is actually for the categorization of all that project data.
Okay, so it's apply, doesn't
Yes.
matter. All right.
Yes.
To which okay. Next we have also a question from Rose Azlil Razi. Okay. Question: how you quantify the value creations from BIM implementation in a project? Is there any guideline or procedure to capture the value creation in a project? Oh, this was a very good question. So we already talk about value creation.
That is a great question. I'm going to actually say the value creation measurement is difficult to measure, but I think once you have access to this information and you're able to make more informed design decisions through the information in your model, the value component is quickly recognized. Whether it's assemblies that are too heavy, and you know you can't lift those assemblies into location or require bigger crane requirements, whether it's knowing that you need certain amount of lead time on certain size pipes on these oil and gas facilities, knowing how much quantity of this is required is going to then impact some of those decisions. Pre-ordering materials based on those lead times, that is quick and easy to quantify through a BIM-based model. Whereas on a 2D environment, to take that information off, it takes time.
I believe that the value creation more on your schedule optimization, right? So
Actually, the value is applicable to many aspects of the project. It's during the design process, during pre-construction, during construction. There's so much value that can be gained from this data, not just during the design phase and not just in the construction phase. It's all aspects. And even, you know, the more information I could hand over to Ronnie with iConstruct, the more she can utilize that information as well. So it becomes a very much a street of information that is going to impact all decisions, and the value is massive.
okay, all right. So we move to the next question from Asnan Osman. When is the best project phase to identify part of construction for AWP? I believe this the question to Ronnie.
When is the best project phase to identify path of construction? Oh,
Yes.
okay, sure. So from my understanding, is it during design, I think, is when the conversations should commence when it comes to planning for the AWP, because the sooner you're having those conversations, then the sooner you're getting the alignments between all the departments to ensure that they are aligning all their information to that one unique identifier. So that the sooner that you're able to get alignment between all the departments, the better off you're going to be, because it's going to be more seamless to the time you get to construction. Now, even when design moves into digital engineering, that is the perfect time as well, because that is going to ensure that there is refined data within the model, and they're going to be able to ensure that the processes that you need to have, where if the information is changing, whether the objects in the model is changing, whether the data is changing, digital engineering is then going to be able to set up processes to automate updating the data, updating the model to ensure that there's consistency. So when it comes to creating work packs, then the process is streamlined. So that's the best phase in the project, I believe.
Yeah. So it's supposed to be start at the early stage, supposed to be start with a certain level, and the more detail we have in the engineering, the more comprehensive detail we're going to extend that. Something like that.
Correct.
Okay. Next question from Kanan Uni. Does iConstruct have a good track record in providing example of 400 work pack or more for onshore brownfield project? I think based on your presentation just now, Ronnie?
So we do have a project with another oil and gas company currently, but because of confidentiality, we haven't been able to create a case study on it just yet. But we do. So we do have the experience, and we are working with other oil and gas companies at this moment. But due to confidentiality, we don't have a case study, unfortunately. Hopefully soon we will, though.
Okay. Before that, I missed one question from Nor Lydia binti Muhammad Jalil from MHSE. So the question is, can you, this one to Ronnie, can you show demo sample of the work pack template? How detailed is the constraint management portray reflected in the work pack? So now the question is about more on constraint management. So when we talk about AWP, one element, we need to have a free constraint, right? So how, if you can demonstrate this?
Yeah, so I won't be able to use my model to demonstrate it right now, but I will have to have a look through my my files, because I've got that data available. So is it possible for me to send that one through after this meeting?
Yeah, sure. We will share that later with the participant.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah. So we move to the next question. Also from Lydia, also ask for the mistake. How the asset ID is linked to the material but that purchase or monitor based on PO.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it's a good question. And again, that just goes to your company and defining what the standards are. So linking that asset ID linked to material. So how are you working with your suppliers and your fabricators? So what is the communication that you're having internally? This is why it's really important to have your digital engineering standard defined before you commence any project, I would think, so that you can work with all your suppliers to ensure that everybody is aligning that unique asset tag to the materials that they are supplying. Now, I guess aligning that with a PO, that is something that your company is going to need to look at when it comes to what those steps are within the company to have alignment between all these inputs. So yeah, there is a mapping exercise, and that is a mapping exercise that's required within the company.
Ronnie, it's just maybe some clarification. I believe the question focusing on the bulk material. So if we purchase bulk material, how can we link that to the asset ID?
If you purchase the part material, so you're talking about when you get
bulk material. They purchase bulk material. So if you, I'm guessing if you know you've purchased 100 kilometers of pipe, how can we link that asset tag to that bulk material? If I'm correct in understanding the question.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And are you thinking about more from the aspect of the model or from the?
In terms of constraint management, maybe. So that from what you shown just now, we can see that there are packages that with 70% of material ready, right? So how is it also linked to bulk material? Yeah, like Stefan said, piping or cables or things like that.
So we do also have the ability to break down the piping. So we do have a tool specific that we have built for the other oil and gas companies. So that allows us to break down the pipe that we have within the model if we need to. So when it comes to the material handling. So there's another tool that we've got to manage that.
Yeah. So later, I believe that that's part of you're going to share later how we're going to manage the bulk material as well, because there's so many details. If we want to put one by one, I think we will spend more time if we go to for the bulk. So let's move to the next question to the Ronnie. Okay, it's from Muhammad Fuad. Okay, the model you have shown in the demo is a completed model. How about for every changing 3D model, so detail design ongoing with many changes done through project schedule? Will iConsult be able to capture the changes? Example, synchronize with the work pack created. Another questions, how about integration with planning data with the creation of the work packs in the iConsult?
Yep. So because the tool is configurable, meaning that you can input as much data as you need to, the same thing goes with, you don't have to input every piece of information. So what I mean by that is when your data is continually being updated, or even the objects in the model are being redesigned, we do have the processes in place that you can automate. And so when you're automating, you're continually refreshing the model with the latest information. Now, when it comes to the advanced work packaging, you can have the work packs created and only have the high level data of the information on that work pack. So you've got the work pack actually created, but you don't actually have to perhaps push it out to a report. Now, when it comes to the report, that's where you might display more of the information. So it's just a matter of understanding you've created the work packs, you've scheduled them, but the data is still changing. So if you are continually refreshing the data and the data is held in the database and the data is being pushed up into the objects in the model, then it is always going to reflect the latest information. So it's not fixed. It can always be updated. It can always be changed and refreshed.
Okay. Okay, all right. We move to this one is a question from Saripah Zaida. Saripah Zaida. Okay, it's a very good question. You can see, as my understanding from the webinar that we have seen before, Aviva, Bentley, PDS also can provide similar outcome. Example, having information in AWP to do similar to demonstrated by Ronnie just now. So is what presented today parallel to those presented before? So that's the question. Is it the one that you share is the same capability which demonstrate by Aviva, Bentley previously?
There might be
I think
similarity.
to do justice to Ronnie and Stefan, maybe they were not joining. They didn't join the previous session with Aviva, Bentley, or Hexagon, right? So yeah, I believe they are all utilizing the similar methodology because the background methodology is still AWP, and the data handling is utilizing the BIM concept, right? So is the technology difference in terms of data structure, in terms of templates, and the features that are available within the software, that is the difference that we can see. And I can see that there are some advantages and then features that are interesting that we can see here from Autodesk and iConstruct. Yeah, strength and from by each of the solution providers.
Yeah,
it's my take lah.
Okay, thank you, Al, on behalf.
But we're better as well, I can say.
Okay,
better.
one more question that I have. This one more toward construction. So we can see that all the informations in the drawing, but is it any possible to include such as support? I mean support for the construction, support activity. For example, scaffolding, equipment to be part in the model itself. Because I noticed scaffolding is one from the pain point in the construction activity, which contribute to a lot of delay. So
yeah.
We can incorporate this as well.
Yeah, and I think this is where it comes back to the question of the value that you get from what you model. So today I can model everything I possibly can dream about. Obviously, some things are more complex to model than others, but it's utilizing those purpose-built tools inside our BIM enabled applications specifically for what they are good at. So there are certain applications that have got automation that makes some things really simple to model. So for example, in Advanced Steel, I can model piping, but it's not a tool that's purpose built for piping. Plant 3D is purpose built for that. So yes, we can model everything we want, but again, we have to determine what is the value of that? What does that provide us from a long-term perspective? So the scaffolding, yes, very much is delaying projects, especially if we can't get it to site on time. But what is it? What is the value of having that scaffolding in the model give us? What data does it provide, right? And this is where figuring out what you're modeling, what is the value of it? You know, modeling the 4 screws that hold down the pump to the skid, is that valuable, or is that really just a nice to have? And this is where you need to find that balance, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's very, yeah. Me is why we modeling that, because probably we can package that. We can know the material, the resource, which we normally this all this support activity, they are missing the what they call it, the agents, not the agents, the what we call the preparation toward that. We are underestimate. So we are focused on the big item. For example, on
Yep.
the you say just now, bulk material. Nobody take care on the bulk material because everybody think this is very easy to get. It's not lonely, but I experience as well. This can kill the schedule, I say.
Yes. Yes. So yeah. So again, yes, it can be done, provided it provides value, right? And that's and I'm not saying scaffolding doesn't provide value. That's you as an organization need to determine what it is that you feel is going to be needed to be physically modeled or implied modeling. So with that pump, for example, I can have a property attached to that pump to say it comes with 4 hold-down bolts that are 150 mil long in length and of this particular specification. I can still access the data. I can't see the physical element, but I can access the information. So sometimes the modeling component is one where you have to rationalize to see where the value is in what you're modeling. Is it something that needs to be physically seen, or can it just be a metadata item attached to that object?
Yeah, the more data you want to include, the more time you require.
Yes.
Okay, I think we already at 4 o'clock. So we are already end of that the time. So thanks to all speaker, guest speaker,
Yeah.
both Ronnie and
Uh,
Stephen. Yes, Al, do you have anything?
I think we still have some question also from
Yeah.
Sharifa, right, on is BIM in terms of information similar to PPM. So just for information, Stefan and Ronnie and others, we also pursuing project production management adoption methodology as well, right, together with AWP, right. So the question on BIM and PPM now, right? So I would say that it is in different domain, BIM and PPM. So because BIM, the focus is on the information handling, right? The data, how we manage the data, and how we maximize the utilization of the data, right? So that we create big value out of it, right?
Yes.
But PPM, the focus is actually on the more on the methodology of looking project as a production system. So and the background of the science behind is operation science. Yes, definitely the information handling will still be utilizing the concepts of BIM and ISO 19650, right? Stefan already presented. Right? That's my take to respond to that question. Maybe Stefan can also comment.
I would agree. I mean, the information, as I said, it's not just utilized in 1 point or 2 points. It can be used all the way from concept all the way down, right? And that's the important part here, you know, getting away from that thought pattern that everything is just 2D documentation. There's actually a whole world out there. And actually a good phrase that I once heard is, why are we insistent on 2D drawings when we live in a 3D world? So everything we look at is in 3D, yet for some reason we are insistent that we have to dumb this down to a flat image, right? Let's just, I mean, I can touch the things that are around me. Why can't we make it in the same way? So, you know, and then of course, if I can know what something is, I can use that information for whatever it is, whether it's validation, whether it's operations, whether it's construction, it doesn't matter.
Okay. Thank you, Stefan.
Yeah.
Say the last question by Adi there.
Okay. Question to Ronnie. Can I say iConsult is a BIM slash AWP application ready, or you need separate software to manage BIM and iConsult is only subset of BIM?
That's a really good question. And as Stefan said in his presentation, you can't buy BIM. BIM is a process. So where do you have that information? Where is the project information? Are you getting that from another design tool? Are you getting that from another tool within your company? Is it held in an Excel database? So we don't stipulate the data, you stipulate the data. Our tool just empowers you to manage and edit the data within the model. So I think that, in a nutshell, should answer that question. So, Stefan, do you think I've missed out on anything on that question?
I think the work packaging, the AWP process that you enable is enabled on top of Navisworks, and Navisworks is the ability to consume many different file types, many different models, and consume that information. So I think that's the key here as well.
And also based on what Ronnie demonstrated, I would say that the iConstruct is crafted to support AWP implementation. Yeah, right. It enables the methodology to be applied. Right. Yeah.
Yes.
But again, the information could come from Aviva, could come from S3D, E3D, whatever, and
yes,
the better the information we have, we input, we use to utilize in iConstruct, then the better the outcome will be on the implementation.
Yep, you hit the nail right on the head. It's making sure you implement that good BIM execution plan, or at the beginning of the project, you know, knowing what the outcome needs to be, you can then implement a good execution throughout your design process to make sure everything that we need during the work packing process is available.
I see point Sharifah is
yeah,
already.
I mean, sorry, because I thought the webinar's title is this Demystifying BIM. And I get more confused towards the end of the webinar. It's not it's making it more mystified, because in Malaysia, BIM, as I understand it, is a software that you'd have to go in the construction company. They actually buy BIM, or to actually impose BIM on the construction companies to actually use BIM. And there is a special company that they actually maybe sell the access to it or something like that. So yes, and Ronnie just said that BIM is a process. Is it something that you buy, or is it a methodology that you buy?
No. BIM,
That's why it's confusing.
100% is a process, right?
Okay.
When I say it's a process, I will use a product like Plant 3D to model my pipe. And when I model my pipe, I select my DN80 pipe and my pressure rating and my insulation. And when that 5-meter long pipe is modeled, I know everything about that pipe, the volume that the pipe holds, the insulation, the diameter, the space that it consumes. It knows that when I add a T in the middle of that pipe and want to make a junction off that, it knows what type of T that I can use. You know, what is it? Is it a diameter reducing? Is it an eccentric T? You know, all these specifications are all attached to this item that I've modeled. And I've literally just picked 2 points in my model, and all that information that I've selected from my drop downs during that modeling process, it knows about it. And that flows on from one person to the next person. So for example, I couldn't connect a DN80 pipe to a DN 500 valve. That doesn't make any sense, right? You'd need to put a series of components between it. but if the specifications in the BIM modeling software, so the software that is enabled this process to be able to put all this information in, it will know what it can and can't do, which then removes that human error from the interpretation of what you would normally do in a 2D environment.
I guess you've answered the question I probably have. You see, I'm from the engineering consultancy company, so I don't know whether I speak for all of them, but since Petronas have started these webinars, AWP straightforward. Fabricators can buy them, construction company can buy them. But for engineering consultancy to actually comply to AWP, what do you have? What do you use?
That's a good question, and the compliance is more to the point that it's the more information that you can put in your model that you can hand over to your client means that the client can then do a better process to creating these work packages from a long term.
So would it be fair to me for me to say, from the point of the engineering design, from the engineering consultant point of view, it would be using the full set of either Aviva or PDS or Navisworks, then it can go seamlessly into AWP processes.
Yep. Or even Autodesk software. We have software that you can use that competes with Aviva and Bentley in the same fashion. So Plant 3D in Autodesk's portfolio does the same as the other tools. But ideally, these file formats go into Navisworks, which then get handed to your client, who then utilizes that information rather than recreates that information.
Okay, so they would have to use the full module of the whole. I mean, because if not, then you'll start doing manually again. You want everything to be.
Yes, so they would need Navisworks to be able to consume the files from the different vendors, but then the iConstruct, which sits on top of Navisworks, is then able to leverage that information to enhance that process.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much for the clarification.
So now, Puan Saripah, you are clear what is the difference between BIM and AWP?
I think I'm getting the picture.
Yep.
All right. So I think we are already over the time. So ladies and gentlemen, yeah, it's very useful. So everybody eager to know. So hopefully after this we have much more clear. So I pass back to you, Wei Chong. Before that, let's wish everybody Selamat Hari Raya. Minat Aidil wal Faizin for all the Muslimin. Okay, Wei Chong.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Syed. So thank you, Mr. Stephen and Ms. Ronnie juga, for the interesting session. Yeah, I think this is a very exciting session. Yeah, so hope we all could benefit from the discussion and have some takeaway points to ponder together. Yeah, I'm sure by now everyone now has an overview of BIM and how it's connected to AWP implementation. So, ladies and gentlemen, so as the saying goes, to every beginning, there's an ending. So as of now, we have come to the end of the event. But before that, we would like you guys to just give us some feedback regarding to this webinar, because your feedback is very important to us. So as shown on this screen, you can scan the QR code, yeah, or you can click the link share in the chat box. Yeah, I just post the link. So let's take 1 to 2 minutes to fill up this form now. Yeah.
Chong, meanwhile, there are questions about sharing the presentation material, right? So I believe we will be emailing the pack to
Yes.
invitees, right?
Yes, correct. At the end, maybe because tomorrow is Friday, so maybe most probably after Raya Week, we'll gather all the presentation pack, and hopefully with the question and answers from our speakers, and then we'll share with all the participants. Yeah.
And the session recording, I believe, like previous JIC sessions, the recording is accessible in Moxie's YouTube and the Moxie's website. But maybe Raimi can comment on that. it will be available as well, right?
Yes.
All right.
So the session will be available in the YouTube, and then we'll send the YouTube link together in our email to the participants. Yeah, together with the presentation pack afterwards. Okay, so yeah, everyone just give us your feedback by scanning the QR code or click the link in the chat box.